In my search for the best sounding pair of headphones, a name keeps coming up again and again and again. That's HIFIMAN Susvara. So today we are taking a look at the king, the HIFIMAN Susvara, named by most listeners who've heard them the best sounding pair of headphones in the entire world. And they're not even the most expensive ones, priced at $6,000. They are almost 15% the price of the Sennheiser Orpheus One, which is priced at $50,000. How can HIFIMAN produce a headphone that's considerably cheaper but also sounds better than what was in the past considered to be the true king of headphones? Well, Susvara starts with a planar magnetic design, and we've reviewed a lot of HIFIMAN headphones, all of them having those stealth magnets, the stealth ear cup, and everything made so that the entire construction of the headphone is more acoustically transparent. Well, Susvara is the king, the one that started it all. This has the most transparent magnet, the most transparent ear cup, and protection for the magnet, and also one of the most comfortable designs that HIFIMAN has ever created. Starting with the feeling of the headphones, those feel like true proper flagship headphones. They are pretty lightweight but feel constructionally solid. They feel as if and they are made of metal. This is an alloy construction which is super light. This is the same headband mechanism that HIFIMAN has been using with most of their most recent headphones, although Susvara feels a bit larger on my head and offers me a slightly better comfort than most headphones, even made by HIFIMAN. So they are in the same class and league as HIFIMAN HESHI 1000 Special Edition, but they are much more comfortable than HIFIMAN Aria Organic or Ananda Nano, both of which are much tighter on the head. Susvara feels like a pillow. The ear cup is very deep, so there is more than enough space for my ears inside. The sponge is quite dense and it has this super nice memory feeling touch when you touch it. Susvara doesn't really isolate you from the outside noise, so this is a pair of headphones that gives you 1 to 3 decibels of passive noise isolation. You hear most of the sound around you, most of the sound that Susvara is playing will go into your room, and also the room acoustic will matter a bit, because if you listen very loudly, the sound coming from the headphones will bounce on the walls and back into your ears. That is pretty important because with this much stealth magnet design, you may be wondering whether Susvara even makes sense anymore since HIFIMAN has launched the Susvara Unveiled. And I will be making a video about that, but if you want the short version, they are very different. The sound isn't necessarily better on one or the other. They have a pretty similar resolution, but Susvara Unveiled sounds a bit more forward and it gives you a first row experience during a concert, where Susvara, the original, puts you at the center of the action, but plays everything around you and giving you the most detailed position that you can have. So they are pretty different in the signature. What is not different is that both of them need an upgrade on the cable. They are using 3.5mm cables at the headphone side. And at the moment of making this video review, this is the cable that I choose to use with them for most of my time. This is the Lavry Cable Master Silver. Lavry Cable makes a lot of cables. It is one of my top choices because they make flexible cables. They can customize their cables for you, and they look pretty nice. For me, ergonomics matter quite a bit more than the sound, but Lavry Cable has both. Back to the Susvara, this is considered the king of headphones by most listeners. This is not something that I say as a reviewer, but most people who have heard them will tell you that this is the best sounding headphone ever. Someone commented on a video that there is now an Isvarna, and I will do my best to review the Isvarna and compare it to the Susvara naturally, but this is the Susvara Unveiled compared to the original Susvara, if you wanted to take a closer look. They look very similar, they use the same design and the same comfort. The Unveiled will receive its own video, its own written review. Please check out Audiophile Heaven for that because it will be interesting. For now, let's focus on the original Susvara. It is the best sounding headphone that I've heard. It's pretty hard to say that as a reviewer, but in general, it is the best all-rounder. It is the easiest to recommend to absolutely everyone. It includes everything. An excellent depth to the bass. It has a warm, somewhat slow bass, so it creates a very nice bass reverberation and bass decay. It has a beautiful, brilliant, and vivid mid-range, and it has a smooth, refined, but extremely detailed treble. It basically combines everything that would make it sound alive. And it sounds like you are in a room where music is actually playing. It's super transparent. This actually makes it very hard to describe for me as an audiophile reviewer, because it doesn't have much of a signature. It allows your music to play as it is without imposing its own signature. And that's super desirable for a pair of high-end headphones because you don't want them to color the sound. You don't want the headphones to be the most obvious part of the sound. You want those to be an open window to your music, and this is what Susvara is. This is why most people love it so much. They just allow your music to play through. Some people have commented that Susvara is too hard to drive. And that's an understatement. It is the hardest to drive pair of headphones in the entire world. It's insanely hard to drive, just put it this way. Most headphone amplifiers don't stand a chance to drive the Susvara. Most of them will just sound weak or distorted, especially if you go for higher volume, and this is because Susvara has a SPL of 83 decibels. This is lower than some speakers. To give you some idea, there are speakers drivable with less power than what Susvara requires to be driven well. With this being said, there are amplifiers that don't even cost that much which can drive the Susvara, and that was interesting. I have in the back the Sparkos Gemini from the USA, which is a hybrid amplifier, both with the tube pre and the solid state amplifier part. And Gemini does an excellent job driving the Susvara, so you don't need to spend that much. Gemini is priced at around $1,000. You just need a DAC. And a good DAC can be around $1,000 also. So Susvara isn't that insanely hard to drive, it's just very hard to find a good matching. Because for example, Aoun S17 Pro is around the same price as the Gemini, but on paper, Aoun 17S Pro has much more driving power. With Susvara, it struggles. So you get a much better experience by driving them out of the Gemini, which gives them a fuller bass, a better bass extension, and a lower distortion when you go loud. It's quite important to read a bit about the pairings, because with Susvara, you can't really drive them out of any portable. So no portables for them, nothing. Not even the CA1000T from Astel & Kern, iBass DX300 to Max TI, nothing will drive the Susvara as a portable. The closest I was able to get was the Lotopo GT. Although I have this little DAP here, it is still unable to drive the Susvara fully. So although most high-end sources will be able to give you a decently detailed sound with a good resolution, most of them will distort as soon as you try to push the volume a bit higher. So let's say when you want to reach 100 and 120 decibels, that will not be possible with a source that is inadequate for the Susvara. The sound of the Susvara is the most detailed sound I've heard in a pair of headphones. It extracts the most detail, but at the same time, it doesn't really make that detail obvious. So it's not the kind of headphone that will cut your song into pieces. It will not separate instruments from each other, but it will reveal how nice of a construction the whole song is. It's super interesting because I realized that this kind of presentation works best with classical music. I have been listening to a lot of classical lately. Also, it works very well with rock, with metal, with EDM. Everything just plays more naturally when you have this kind of signature. Susvara just combines and blends music in a natural way. It has the widest soundstage out of all headphones. And even if some headphones can stretch the soundstage a bit better, for example, the Sennheiser HD800S or T plus A Solitaire PSA, Susvara has a better coherency to that soundstage. So the whole size is a bit better. Some headphones are able to project the sound a bit better in the lateral plane. They project it a bit better in the left and the right plane. But Susvara gives the soundstage a more rounded presentation. So you get both the width, the depth, and the height of the soundstage a bit better on the Susvara. They just create this so much more naturally. You just feel like you are in the middle of the concert. It doesn't really feel like you are listening with a pair of headphones. And that happens a lot, for example, with Sennheiser HD800S, because HD800S has a very unnatural sound. It's super bright, the bass rolls off quite early, and it doesn't have a lot of bass. So with HD800S, you get a wide, bright, and cold sound, which is not exactly desirable for most music. It's not for classical, it's not for rock, and I don't know what music sounds good with that kind of presentation. While Susvara gives you a warmer, more organic, more sonically cohesive sound. This is the beauty of Susvara. It just creates sound in a way that feels natural, relaxed, and laid back. Those would be the best words, because Susvara sounds very relaxed. T plus A Solitaire PSA also misses a bit on the bass, so the sub-bass extension just dies a bit too early, while Susvara creates a much fuller, deeper, and also a bit slower, more natural bass. From HIFIMAN, the closest signature I would say is the HA1000 Special Edition, although it's still quite a bit behind the Susvara, so Susvara is quite a bit better. Naturally, this is the diamond of the HIFIMAN production. This has long been the best pair of headphones that HIFIMAN has ever created, and it is the dream headphone for most audiophile and most music lovers. Susvara just makes listening to music effortless, fun, and natural. You always hear the natural texture in a voice. This is something that Susvara does very well, which all of the other headphones that I mentioned so far don't reproduce quite as accurately. For example, when you listen to my voice, I have a bit of texture in this. You see, like, I have a grindy, grungy kind of texture, like, you see, this is what Susvara can reproduce very well and makes it feel alive, like it's happening in front of you. Think about it like an OLED display versus a standard IPS display, if you are into monitors. Susvara just takes the veil off. It's super unveiled in the sound, and this is why HIFIMAN has been trying to call the technology the stealth magnet, the unveiled, the everything. The thing with this is that Susvara reveals both the good and the bad in music. For example, older music, which is recorded brightly, will sound quite bright. It will be sometimes aggressive, while relaxed music will be very relaxed. Susvara just renders everything perfectly. It's right there with the music, and it allows each song to sound as it was recorded. It also has the infinite dynamic response, which is super nice because some music just has a very nice dynamic response to it. For example, with rock and especially orchestral rock, you just have a very high dynamic range. With modern and compressed rock, you have that wall of sound, which Susvara reproduces very nicely, as if you are sitting in the first row of the concert. Most of the competition, most of the other flagships tend to have a slightly higher compression rate than the Susvara. So most of them will compress the sound slightly compared to the Susvara, which creates the full width of the dynamic range of your music. One of the most direct competitors is Aude's LCD5, and LCD5 is excellent for studio work. It's super detailed, it exposes everything in music, but doesn't sound that natural. It's not super organic, it's super detailed, but a bit surgical in how much it cuts instruments apart from each other, in how much it reveals the information. Susvara doesn't put the information under a magnifying glass. LCD5 has that habit, it just exposes the textures a bit too much. It's not about the impulse response, because both of them on paper will have a very similar fast impulse response. It's about the acoustic of the headphone. LCD5 is made to be incredibly detailed, but it's made to be precise. It doesn't have such a wide soundstage compared to the Susvara, which has a much wider soundstage, but LCD5 can reproduce a bit more sub-bass, while Susvara tends to have a slightly less sub-bass and a bit more upper bass, which creates the feeling of naturalness a bit better. Susvara gives more body to music, more body and substance to instruments, while LCD5 doesn't give that much body to music, but it creates the EDM or dubstep sub-bass a bit better. In general, HIFIMAN Susvara is a fully recommended headphone. It is the best sounding headphone you can purchase at this moment. The only problem is the price point, which is $6,000. Although HIFIMAN does have some sales sometimes, including some shops, you can find open box offers on some official distributors. Most of them will give you a brand new Susvara that someone has listened and decided they can't afford to keep. It's been on the market for quite a few years, so it's not a new model, and yet it stands the test of time very well. Other companies have created many headphones which rose and fell, while Susvara survived to be the king and to tell the tale. At this point, you should ask yourself whether you can afford the Susvara. It's not about whether it is worth it or not. I personally think it is worth it. I personally think it is the dream headphone for any music lover, for any audiophile, for anyone who wants the ultimate. You can't really upgrade from it. And that is something that we will explore in the Susvara Unveiled review, but the Unveiled is not necessarily an upgrade. It's a different take on the sound. So I fully recommend the Susvara. I think that if you can afford it, you should purchase it. And at the same time, if you can't really afford the Susvara, you should check out Audiophile Heaven for other reviews. Also, don't forget to check our channel and written website if you want to find a good amplifier, a good DAC for the Susvara, a good cable. The default cable doesn't have the best ergonomics, but no high-end headphone has a cable with very good ergonomics. They just come with more basic cables. If you purchase a Susvara, you will have to purchase the DAC and enough for it, but you will get the best sonic experience that you have never believed to be possible in personal audio. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you are having fun at Audiophile Heaven. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and I hope we'll see each other really soon. Bye bye!